about htmx, and I even like created the htmx demo for process runs. Yeah. So there are like two things. So one thing is that htmx is not the worst possible idea. It's pretty bad, but it's not the worst. And uh, it's it's like jQuery without stigma in a sense. It's like it's pretty hard to go to your like CTO and say, "Hey, we want to add jQuery to the website." They will laugh you out of the room. If you go to your CTO and you say that I'm going to use HTMX, they're like, "What's HTMX?" So it's already kind of like way better, way better position wise, right? So it's like it's better if you're talking about like what is HTMX instead of no, we're not letting you add jQuery. Um, so it's like pretty new, and it solves a lot of problem that like backend developers have, and backend developers have like silly problems. So the silly problems that they have is that they want to add like a search bar where you like type something and your results are filtering out. And it's clear that you can't do that without JavaScript, but and like WASM is not a thing. As as much as WASM people want to think of it's being a thing. If I'm writing in Elixir or like or like Python, like WASM is not an answer. It's like if I'm doing like uh, Rust, right? Or maybe Go soon with like with the garbage collection stuff. It could maybe like it's a bit of an answer, but it's not really. So you have to use JavaScript, and they're like, oh, do you have to like use React for that? It just in a sense they just don't know how to kind of like use islands in like I don't know like PHP or Python and all that stuff. And like all the people who know about like islands, they're not interested in talking to like Python people. So there is like this huge disconnect that is like, oh, but like what I need is like so simple. And what you would do 10 years ago, you would go to like jQuery, plugin, um, uh, search, filter, something like that. And no one is allowed anymore to like use jQuery and use like this plugin. And it seems like this plugin doesn't even work anymore, right? Oh, so it's like spinning something, but like, is it going to do something? Yeah, I don't know. So it's like you're not allowed to use that. The disconnect between like even even like Preact is pretty big. So they use like Alpine.js, which is pretty bad framework in my mind. They use like vue.js, which is again like not that easy, not that kind of like doesn't fit like how people think, how Python people think. And here comes htmx. They're like, hey, we are we are giving you jQuery functionality, but it's packaged as like as a server thing, and everyone is just like immediately happy. So it doesn't matter what the tool is. It's just like the market fit of like I don't want to learn JavaScript, and no one allows me to install jQuery anymore. It's kind of like explosion from there. Yeah, kind of. This is like my example. So it's like, hey, I want to like increment a counter. I want to click a button and I want to issue increment post request, and I want to get a new response from that. And it's like this is the response. And it's like, was it hard to implement that on the backend? And we're going to go and say increment and we're going to say no. We're checking that we're getting the post request, and we're incrementing some counter that and returning like the number. Like backend people are like can backend people when they see this, they're very happy. Especially if you're like write it in Python or Scala or something, right? So like this is JavaScript, so they're not going to be as happy. But this idea that you can just check that the method is post, call some database thing, and return just like a string or a number or like a piece of HTML. This is like heaven for them. I intentionally took their like example, which is like implemented bad, but I feel like it's implemented kind of like bad in a way that backend people are would be happy. So I was like, okay, I'm leaving it. So you see, I updated this page, and I got this request, kind of like waterfall. Like I got all the like page data, right, and then I got this request, and every time I'm going to update, it's like there, and like all my images are like delivered even later, right? So it's like there's no fancy kind of like preloads that you get from like like next image optimization, something like that, right? So it's like it's a completely kind of like waterfall thing, and you can like see that the image is not there, and it's like why are we doing this? uh, the why we're doing this is that this tab it like it returns this tab list, so which is like this part. It returns this text, which is this part, and it returns an image, and even returns like CSS to style all of this stuff. And when I click on this tab 2, it will get the same HTML, just like 1, 2, 1, 2. But now you see like selected tab changed, the like text changed, like the image changed. So it's clearly the same template, just like some data changed. And if you go to code, it's like tab number, right? So this is just a parameter. And if the uh, if the like index is equal to the parameter, it's selected. If the text like is we're picking like the text for like that tab, we're picking an image for that tab. So backend people when they see this, they're like so happy. And the problem is like when I'm doing SSR, how am I going to render this part of the page if that's like a separate request, right? So the way that it happens is that where is it? Yeah. So this is like tabs, so like text until here. But now, so if I disable JavaScript, so you see that like it doesn't show anything. Uh, so I get this text, but then instead of like server side rendering, we're like saying, hey, once you load the page, just get this URL and replace tabs, which is like this ID, with the response that you get. So it's going to be like tab element with tab ID, and inside of it you're going to get tab list and tab content. Like in Astro, it's actually not that kind of like complicated to um, where is it? Like once I'm here, I can actually I can actually kind of like SSR some stuff inside of it. I can just import this component and like pre-render it. But just to keep the jQuery kind of like feeling alive, I kept it as they have an example, and it's silly. It's like it's not like what everyone wants to see. Like it's not optimal. It's like it's not optimized. It's not the best. Like when I click on stuff, there's like no spinners that show that like something happens, right? But it's like you could write like SPA the same way that's going to be like not showing spinners and stuff. So it's like it's better than jQuery, which is like not a high bar to achieve. So happy I didn't got the influencer hype. HTML is less for me than I thought. Yeah, HTML. I like actually sent my boss to htmx meetup they had in San Francisco, and he was like happy with it. He had started with C sharp, and we have Elixir on backend. He's like, yeah, this is like a fun thing. Like all the people who were at that meetup were like pretty happy to be there. So I kind of like know people who are happy with this. Yeah, it's not me. It's kind of like not kind of like optimal enough for me. But I can see the backend people being like, yes, it's yeah. So the thing about like backend people is like this is the kick.com, which is like a new thing that spends like millions, like tens of millions on streamers, and they don't spend anything on the infrastructure. So this is like the data picker. So you would expect to go to like a year, write a year and get something, and you're not getting anything. You expect to like click here, or maybe you expect to be able to click on a date and like select one with a cursor, but unfortunately it just scrolls the model, right? The thing about like backend people is that they will just do this thing with the select option, and it will work better than whatever person was working on this and created all of this kind of like stuff in Vue. They're pretty happy about themselves. They're like working on this the best framework ever. Everyone who works at Vue, they're like convinced that this is the best framework ever. But the end result is completely kind of like bad. And if you have a company where you can go to CEO and say, hey, this is a sign up page that those Vue people created, and this is a sign up page who our like backend people with HTMX created, 8 times out of 10, the backend with HTMX is going to be better. And that's really kind of like unfortunate, and that's a really kind of like telling about like the kind of like average level of front end. So I'm somehow like happy that HTMX thing is picking up steam, because it's like, yeah, at least your like CEO or whatever is going to ask you like, is this better than HTMX? And that will bring kind of like stuff. Yeah, so it's like they at least have tabs. It's like it's good. Like you don't see where this tab is going, because it's like no one has time to do that. Uh, but it's like, yeah, I selected the February for some reason. It's like, how did I select it? And like, why is it working like that? Yeah, but they're probably really happy with it. Like all of those people who created this like unusable thing, they're going to go to uh, Stack Overflow and say that they're happy with Vue, and and in some sense, I'm just like I'm happy that some of them are going to be fired, because like someone with HTMX is going to create something better. As long as people are creating something better, that's all that I'm asking for.